let me know when you're live. Yeah. Good morning, everyone. I want to start this conversation with a moment of reflection. Over the past year, and in fact, very recently, uh, our startup ecosystem has experienced some really heartbreaking losses. Brilliant minds, Amit Banerji, Rohan Mirchandani, Ambareesh Murty, Siddharth Rao, Rohan Malhotra, and many, many other names. These were just not successful founders, but individuals who had dreams, ambitions, and so much left to give. These losses close to home are very close to home. I mean, I knew many of these founders very closely, and I'm sure a lot of you also had various interactions. And you know what has happened is that we all believe that the late nights, the never ending pressure, the meetings, the investor discussions, the hustle are all great. These are all the sacrifices we make in the name of success, but at what cost? uh, it made me realize that while we speak so much about innovation, funding, and scaling, we rarely speak about ourselves, about the toll this journey takes on our mind and body. And the truth is that we are driving forces behind our ventures, but we often forget one simple fact that if we don't take care of ourselves, the entire ship can sink. And that's what today's discussion is so important. We need to shift the narrative, not just for ourselves, but for the entire ecosystem. So I'm really glad to have a dear friend, Luke Coutinho, here with us today. Luke has dedicated his life to helping people find balance, health, happiness, and even in the most high pressure environments, Luke is advising, millions of people online in his programs. There are billionaires, CEOs, there are startup, everybody, right? He's doing an incredible work, and he has actually seen this very closely with many many cases. So today, and again thanks to Edge, which helped us put together this session where we were able to get a very good bunch of founders and people on this. So first of all, I want to welcome Luke to this session. Hi, Luke.
Hi, Vishal. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks a lot, Luke. And I think this time, my request to Luke and everybody is that, while Luke has some filters on, this time, Luke, let us make it as frank and as raw as possible, because the people on the live stream are all who are very serious about this. We had taken out a little survey. About 15% are already experiencing burnout. A large percent did experience some level of stress but are kind of already coping. And there is a huge section in the middle which is not even sure what is happening with there. So there is a lot of concern in the community. And we have people from all over the world, literally, from US, Canada, Singapore, Dubai, India. So there is a good sense of people here. And what I wanted to do is really get your opening views on what is happening. Why are we seeing these high performing people who are, I mean, they look absolutely fit from the outside. They are all, a lot of them. In fact, I remember Rohan was actually actively gymming and playing tennis and stuff. So, what is happening? And please talk about what you are seeing currently in the world.
Great, Vishal. Thank you. And thank you for allowing me a space to be absolutely honest, because to fix most problems in the world today, we actually need more honesty than sugarcoating and, the rigid framework that defines us when we're at conferences, medical conferences, speaking about health within the system of rules and regulations and everything else. And that's why a lot of us today are struggling with this. So, number one, the word that I want to inspire everyone, the hat that I want everyone to wear through this conversation, the lens I want you to look through is perception. Okay, what is our perception? Everything starts with perception. Everyone's a founder on this call. You perceived a particular problem, a particular solution, and you're building towards it. How are we perceiving health? From a space of fear? Absolutely. The media will throw up the stories of such people. But it's not just that. There are hundreds and thousands of people dying. Cardiovascular is at the top right now, everywhere. I'm privileged to have the data ranging from CEOs, CXOs, billionaires, the Prince of Saudi Arabia, you name it. And these data points are very exciting for us because it's easy to say that, hey, stress is causing this problem and all of these things. But when we extract the data, okay, we find that we can categorize what is causing cardiovascular death into three main categories. While a lot, I think it's a very, very Indian mentality. It's not, I don't say this in a derogatory way, to blame it on our genes. And yes, while strong genes can put us in a predisposition, it isn't. We don't understand there's a subject called epigenetics, which means our lifestyle can influence our genes. I currently have patients at the age of 70 and 80 having triglyceride levels of 500 because it's genetic, but they're active, their stress levels are low, and they've never had a stent or a cardiac issue, which actually inspires us that even if it's genetic, all the more, that's just a little warning that, hey, you got to take care more of yourself. But we jump straight onto heavy medication, which is the right thing to do if you have a problem. But we don't understand that if we're not managing the side effects of statins and high blood pressure medication, and it's a psychological thing. If I'm on medication and my blood parameters are looking good, I just feel that, oh, everything in life is going well. But we forget to understand that the medicine is only suppressing a symptom. We are still metabolically unfit. We're still metabolically challenged. And that little problem is going to grow into something bigger and bigger and bigger, which is why you have data points showing that someone on high blood pressure medication for 20 years is eventually going to grow into a new problem. Someone on a statin is eventually going to grow into other inflammatory conditions. So while I respect medicine, that's my field, integrative medicine, we have to pair lifestyle with this. So today, the perception is let's look at health differently. Okay, so Vishal, you want me to jump straight into my top three categories of data? So if anyone is having a cardiac event, or we are laying the path towards moving towards cardiovascular risk, there are three categories: physical stressors, chemical stressors, and emotional stressors. Now let's break this down because let's face it, in our life, there is going to be stress. I'm not here to say reduce your stress. I'm here to teach us how we got to navigate through stress so that stress doesn't become a burden on, since we're talking about heart, I'll speak about that one organ today. So, what do we have in physical stressors? Very simple. Either a sedentary lifestyle becomes a physical burden on the body because the body needs circulation, or over exercising becomes a burden on the body. Sleep deprivation becomes a physical stressor and an emotional stressor. If I'm sleep deprived and I'm working out heavy, I'm actually at more risk for cardiovascular problems. But we perceive, oh, I should do my exercise, irrespective of my jet lag, irrespective of my sleep. On my other physical stressors could be as simple as a deficiency of the smallest vitamin, a vitamin D3, a vitamin B12. When there's a deficiency, we just think, oh, I'll correct it. But what's happening at a biophysical level in the body? There's a burden on every organ because every organ requires that amount of vitamin for its physiological functions. So anything that the body doesn't get to survive becomes a burden on every organ in the human body. So we have a deficiency of vitamins, and then we have this overload of vitamins and supplements that leads to inflammation in the liver and eventually the heart. In the name of longevity, in the name of endurance and performance, we're just taking mostly unregulated supplements, which may be needed in small amounts, but because we're taking it all the time, it's cumulatively building up into a burden on the body. The research of this will come out probably in 30 years or the next 40 years when everyone's probably gone through their suffering of disease and cardiovascular issues. So these are physical stressors. Now let's come to chemical stressors. Chemical stressors, the food that we eat. Junk, ultra processed, is not food, it's chemical junk. Every time we eat that, I'm not here to say that we got to clean up. It should be 90% good whole food, 10% junk. The body can survive and thrive on that. But the more chemicals we're putting, we don't understand that we have convenience food, we have easy food. It's allowing us to work longer, Swiggy, Zomato, get quick foods, which is the absolute crap of whatever. In fact, there's a wrong meaning of junk. We call McDonald's and KFC junk, but your food that's coming to you in 10 minutes is probably worse than that junk food. So all these little things in the name of convenience is a chemical overload from the kind of oils that are being used. Okay, cheaper oils, cheaper food. Cheaper oils, the faster it cooks, the better it tastes. This is a chemical burden which leads to something called inflammation. All cardiac events are inflammatory in nature. So I have my food, I have my air quality. My air quality. That's why the ICMR can honestly publish that the life expectancy right now in places like Delhi and Mumbai could be lower by even 30%, which is huge. Why? Because of inflammation. So we have those chemicals in the air. Then we have our chemicals around us, pollution, and all of these things. These are all chemical. If we're on heavy medication, but we're not managing the side effects of these medicines, you're on thyroid medication, you're on steroids, you're on statins, please take it. You're supposed to. But you have to manage the side effects. What is a steroid depleting from your body? You got to put it back in. What is a chemotherapy depleting? What is a statin depleting? If you're not putting it in and balancing the chemical overload or this chemical balance, you have a chemical overload, which in turn, that is why they say medicine treats a symptom but causes a new problem. So the idea is not to fear medicine, it's to manage it better. These are chemical stressors. Now let's come straight into the emotional stressors. All of us are built for a certain amount of stress. The body can go through extreme stress followed by extreme relaxation. It's balance between the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. In fact, if you ask me my definition of longevity, health span, and lifespan, the more time we spend in the parasympathetic system is how healthier and how longer and our quality of life is going to be. The more time we spend in the sympathetic is simple. It's wear and tear of the body. There's nothing you can fix. You're aging, you're rapidly aging. The balance is the more time I spend in parasympathetic allows my body to repair, regenerate, regrow, recreate. In sympathetic, it's only in a response state. There is no digestion, there is no repair, there is no building. We're in a catabolic state. We're breaking down all the time. So when it comes to emotional stressors, again, sleep deprivation, we know how we feel when we're sleep deprived. Toxic relationships, whether it's personal, it's work environments, toxic business partners, toxic situations at work, all of this influences our emotional response to the human body, which involves one hormone, two actually, cortisol and adrenaline. These are beautiful hormones, but if they're up too long, the burden is on the heart. You speak to any top cardiologist or neurologist today, whether they're from Yale, Stanford, Harvard, Ames, they will say, Luke, stress is the biggest killer. And they are right. Because that cortisol and adrenaline, we think that, oh, I'll take a holiday on the weekend. But what's happening at that stage? We're creating inflammation. We're creating lower testosterone. We're creating higher estrogen. We're creating a metabolic storm in the body, which is not conducive for heart health. So we have our emotional stressors. These are the three categories that most of the population I spoke about are within. Of course, most of us will know this, and now we have to build solutions around this. I also want to talk about other things that are stressing us out. You know, I'm all for biohacking and all of these things, but what is biohacking teaching us at a psychological level? To constantly search for quick fixes and shortcuts. It's not teaching us behavioral changes. It's not teaching us discipline, consistency, fundamentals, and basics, which the heart actually needs. How much of data do we need to tell us we're sicker? But how much of action do we need that we're lacking right now? So if you ask me, we're not a lack of medicine at this point in our world. We're not a lack of technology, no lack of data. We have a massive lack of action because we're chasing the wrong things. We're chasing superfoods thinking they'll solve our heart problems. We're choosing more and more devices that we think will solve our health problems. Great data from these devices, but a complete lack of action. And then we have the final thing, which is in our chaotic lifestyles, we've lost connection with ourselves. I'm not going to talk about religion or spirituality, it's individual to everyone. I'm talking about the spirit. We've become so disconnected from ourselves that we're in so much of disharmony. When we're in disharmony, what environment are we creating in us? Disharmony amidst trillions of cells that keeps us out of homeostasis, keeps us in the sympathetic nervous system. So mostly we are creating environments for our genetics, whether good or bad, to manifest into a cardiac event. But we got to step back right now, break each of these down. It doesn't matter, Vishal, like you said, it doesn't matter how fit you are externally. What matters is what's happening within our body. A lot of people gym, but they're sleeping for 3 to 4 hours. We have autopsies of CEOs who died at very young ages. And the data shows that these CEOs were sleeping 3 to 4 hours. No one needs more science. The science is out there with with no conflict. Direct statements that your sleep deprivation is directly proportionate to cardiovascular inflammation. So we have all of this. Now, the question is, how are we going to start building this in our life? Because so many people are living in fear. Fear is the sympathetic response. It's a great emotional signal for us to do something. Oh, someone died of a heart attack. I'm fearful. It's a great emotion to move us to action. But after a couple of days, everyone forgets who's died and we go back to our normal lives. So, Vishal, I wanted to start off with this because I'm here to talk about simplicity that is going to fix these problems. We do not need more scans. We do not need more all of that stuff because the data is abundant, but we have a massive lack of action and direction. So when these CEOs come to us on our programs, what are we doing? Are we doing complicated nutrition? No, we're just hand holding them, teaching them how to navigate through jet lag, through being jet set. Another perception. As we become startup founders, I think social media has created this kind of jet set life for us that, oh, I'm so busy. Busy means I can't work out. Busy means that if I travel, I can't work out. But we forget to realize that whether we're on flights to New York, Germany, we have the same 24 hours in a day. We may appear, we've started to believe we're so busy, but when I sit down with my billionaires and CEOs and we do a simple time management study, I can promise you every one of them have found at least 2 to 3 hours that were spent on things that were not important. And by removing that, we could fit in time for exercise, an extra hour of sleep. So it's really back to the drawing board, and it's really about the actions that we have to be responsible for.
So one point, Luke, I think I'd like you to address. See, there is this belief that when people are young, 30s, 40s, that this is the time to hustle, this is the time to, burn the midnight oil, and, this is all fine, and people have been doing this. There is this belief, a lot of people are talking that, hey, this is all effect of the vaccine, so people are kind of blaming certain factors like this, which has kind of suddenly accelerated this. So, are you seeing any data which suggests anything which is correlated to vaccine?
Absolutely. I'm not going to lie about the vaccine, but I also want to talk about the emotion of blame. As humans, we psychologically like to involve ourselves in blame because we don't want to face the truth or what we're not doing. Yes, there is data. Doctors have spoken about it. The jab has caused heart attacks for some people. We're way out of that time frame now. We're way out of that time frame. I've seen jabs create certain lymphomas and Hodgkin's lymphomas in certain age groups of 68 and 70, okay, in data pools. But we can't hold on to that. We can't blame that. And even if we know that the jab has played a role in that, what are we doing today? What are we doing today to improve our overall health? If someone's going to die, we all know every vaccination comes with a 1 in 5,000, 1 in 10,000, 1 in 1 million, 1 in 10 million risk. Everyone knows that, whether it's autism, whether it's a bipolar spectrum, we know that, but we still take the vaccinations. Some people are still stuck into that whole thing of blaming, blaming, and blaming. But I can guarantee you, you take these people and you break down their lifestyle, there will be 80 to 90% of things that they're not doing, irrespective of the vaccine. We can't change what's been done. We can't. Even if the whole world comes together and blames the jab, everyone is. There are communities. What's changed? Nothing. So why are we even on that road? We should be on a road to what can be done right now. So the vaccination, great point, but we got to move beyond that. There was a second part of the question that you asked me.
The second part was that, is there any kind of evidence around this, that are people talking about, uh, because this is very generic, right? Is there any specific information on what is causing this? Has there been any kind of evidence
See, I'll
around
tell you what, the information data pools, like we're running a PhD study on lifestyle medicine right now. You know, our biggest challenge? Getting honest data from people. Half the people who portray health on the outside, you don't know what their vices are inside. They will never report it in data pools. Our own patients lie to us about what they do and they don't do. I can't tell you the amount of people after 4 or 5 months when they're not improving, they'll suddenly come and say, oh yeah, look, I vape a couple of times. I do recreational substances a couple of times. No one likes to portray their negatives, Vishal. Data pools are never going to be accurate. But what is in our control right now is, are we waiting for data to make decisions about what is common sense and what we should be doing? Or are we really looking beyond that? There is science, there is evidence, and there is also a whole ton of common sense which we are not using right now. I mean, it's a no brainer. Parents want their kids to eat healthier, but they're not eating healthy. They want their kids to sleep better, but they're not doing it. So, somewhere there's a perfect truth and lie which we have to face, and there's a data pool. Half the world is waiting for data to tell them that deep breathing is great. I mean, come on, it's common sense. So that means only when the science comes out will we start to deep breathe, will we start to do all of these things. I'm saying the human body is a marvel of microscopic engineering. It just requires the right environment to be set within us and outside of us. Startup founders have, oh, yeah, that was your second part of the question. In your 30s, people are hustling, and for all the right reasons. We're at an age where we can. But when I was talking to the Indian Army and Navy, I asked a lieutenant, I asked him a very simple question about stress. He said, Luke, if there is going to be more stress in our life, we have to become bulletproof. Which means, even though there's no war right now, every day our soldiers wake up, they eat, they train, they study, and they sleep. Because the enemy is getting stronger and stronger, and we need to be ready. So, in any CEO's life, if we know we're going to get up, become a startup founder, we know it's going to come with stress. If I'm going to climb the corporate ladder and become a CEO, how am I becoming bulletproof, knowing that my enemies are going to be probably more flights, more stress, more emotions, more family relations getting disrupted because they are away from home? So I can take on all the work in the world. But if I'm not building towards becoming bulletproof to support that position, I am failing at every level, at every single level. So if I know that I'm going to have to be traveling all the time, I have to make certain disciplinary instructions that when I'm back in India, I will only eat home food. When I'm traveling, no matter what, I will get to the gym at the hotel. Maybe my sleep timings will be out of thing, but I can still sleep 7 to 8 hours if I sleep later. I can still organize my life because I need to become bulletproof. We cannot climb the CEO ladder or become a founder without becoming stronger. So I may need a counselor to become emotionally strong to help me. I may need to improve my spirit, my spiritual connection, and my physical body. It is our responsibility. We can't expect for it to happen. We're adding more burden to the body, but we're not preparing the body for more. So, what does a soldier do? They're burdened with these stressors because every stressor makes you stronger. As CEOs and founders, that is our personal responsibility. We have to move away from the shallow excuse of, I do not have time, because that is a lie we tell ourselves every single day. The workouts we're talking about today are not 1 hour workouts. We're not asking people to go to gyms. We're asking people to use your body weight in your hotel room. We're asking people to meditate for 10 minutes in the morning and in the night. We're asking people to keep 15 minutes for their meals and be mindful. It's not a big ask. But in that loss of perception that, oh, I'm the CEO, I'm busy, we think that our perception becomes our subconscious mind and we become puppets of our subconscious mind. We start to believe we don't have time, where I can guarantee you we will find the things which are important for us. Because finally, when a CEO comes sick to us or a founder, they find the time to become healthy again. We don't want to reach that stage where we're forced to find the time.
So, look, you saw recently, Narayan Murthy talked about working 70 hours. The LNT CEO talked about 90 hours. A lot of startup founders actively tweet about, hey, I have to work, 24 hours a day. And Elon Musk also famously sleeps in his office floor. So I think founders are constantly seeing this, this kind of imagery and this kind of narrative from some of the other founders who they kind of look at aping. Do you have cases where there is the other side, where there are people who are extremely successful who initially were burnt out but then kind of made this shift? And what is your take on this whole 90-hour week which everybody is now suddenly talking about?
See, when it comes out onto social media, Vishal, it becomes a debate of emotions. Never an objective or subjective debate. Narayan Murthy, of course, has a lot of valid points. And if you break down his speeches, there are people, Vishal, who want to grow and who are willing to work 90. Can we force it on everyone? Absolutely not. Is social media the platform to talk about these things? We're talking to a shallow audience that gets triggered with wokeness, with emotional responses. Everyone has a choice. You look in an organization, I have doctors and nutritionists in my team. Oh, Luke, give me more patients. It's my passion. It's keeping me going. Some people have broken families. They want to work more. It gives them a sense of identity. We have divorced people. Luke, I want to work more. Now, I'm happy to give them work. I'm happy to teach them not to burn out. But I cannot make that a rule for the people who cannot do it. There has to be that fairness that comes in. Secondly, if CEOs are okay with burnout, they don't care about their employees too. There are many CEOs and founders who don't care about family life. They don't care about, for whatever reasons. I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing. Some of them have been hurt, some of them have been lost their partners and debts, but it's become their identity. that if I work, everyone else should work. Now, that's a wrong way of doing it. So, in my organization, I have 10 people who I know will grow to the highest level because of what they do. My other people will also grow, but dependent on what they do. It's a give and take. So, and we also have to empower people. What is burnout? When you look at corporate wellness today, if you ask me, most corporate wellness is a joke. It's an HR team with a to do list trying to impress the CEO of what we're doing. Most corporates are not looking at the data points and looking at things like what burns us out. Let's talk about burnout for a minute. Vishal, you wake up in the morning with, let's say, 100% energy because you slept deeply. Now, how this 100% energy is used will result in you burning out. If I use too much in the morning, I'll burn out by afternoon. If I'm steady with it, so I wake up and I have a high sugar breakfast, I'm on heavy caffeine, I am going to burn out way faster than someone who's woken up, had a good protein breakfast, the right foods that sustain the right amount of caffeine. So one is our nutrition is either burning us out, or nourishing us. The amount of energy that the body uses to break down junk food is tremendous. How many of us on this call, when you've overeaten a high carb meal, you know how your energy crashes in the next 10 minutes? So, food is one way that we burn out or we energize. Sleep, you wake up sleep deprived, you're already half burnt out. You tell me what the rest of your day is going to be. We're going to make decisions from a space of burnout. We're going to use more caffeine, more vices, more whatever. We're going to be emotionally more angry and snappy, creating more emotional instances. And then what do we do after work? After work, Monday to Friday, people work. We're not supposed to ape cultures where we go sit in a bar, have a couple of drinks. No. If I need to make time for my workout, my sleep, I keep that for the weekend. But now I'm going out, spending my time with my friends, all of that stuff, burning myself more out, less asleep, and the cycle becomes vicious. Now, there are genuine burnout cases where you have a bad leader who's just so toxic that they can absolutely burn out an entire department. But I'll tell you the truth about that because social media makes it look like it's the corporate's problem all the time, Vishal. But we have spoken to the top corporates from around the world, from the IBMs to the Gs. And when we sit down, I ask a genuine question: how many of you are actually burning out? In a room of 400 people, 4 or 5 people will put up their hands. And then you have the media that takes one death out and makes a big deal about it. And as corporates, we become so weak to actually fight these things. We become like, oh, because we're so scared of the woke culture out there. But if you genuinely ask, how many people are burning out? So we took these 6 people from a particular corporate and we said, let's break down your burnout. 2 of them had very toxic managers, toxic departments. Some of them had shifts. 3 of them had sick parents at home. They were caregivers. They had that emotional stress of doing their work, getting their deadlines, going home, looking at someone sick. So you see, when you break it down, there are so many factors, but it's so easy for a culture to blame your work for your burnout. So corporates have to be teaching people. I believe if corporates really focus on getting employees and their CEOs to sleep, so many things get better. Whether it's shifts, whether it's whatever. And from sleep, everything starts to change. You make better decisions to eat, to move. And, these are just some of the honest things that we've seen because social media gives you a very different perspective of what the truth really is in corporates. Yeah,
So in fact, recently I had a meeting with one of our friends, CP Gurnani, and we met at 7 in the morning and we walked at Marine Drive. And he said, "Hey, this is such a great meeting. Nobody's calling and disturbing us versus meeting in a bar in the evening." So I think it's a game changer the minute you start changing your perspective. Another thing,
absolutely.
Luke, is most people don't are in denial and they don't see this coming. I mean, all these founders were extremely tech savvy. They knew about data. I mean, Rohan Mirchandani himself, in fact, Epigamia launched so many high protein drinks and products. I mean, he was, quite an aware health freak. So, is there any signs which we are missing? Is the body, or is it like just boom, it is happening one day? I mean, are there anything which we could look at for ourselves or somebody in our teams to kind
Absolutely,
of
Vishal.
identify this?
We're looking at the wrong things. It doesn't matter how much tech and data we have. Now let's talk data again. Okay, because we're at Tata Memorial, we have the lowest income groups. The diseases that they have there are rarely cardiovascular. They are more cancers because of water quality and extreme use of tobacco or hygiene issues like malaria and typhoid or extreme drinking, alcoholic fatty livers. Okay, but come to urban India where we have all of this because we're missing the main things. How do we measure stress, Vishal? Because today most people have coping mechanisms for stress. So they may say, oh, because a drink makes me feel good, vaping makes me feel good, being in the hustle of work, which gives me an identity, is a coping mechanism for me not to really face what's happening. But what's happening at a physiological level inside? Inflammation. There is no device that can yet measure this. We're missing this. We're looking at the wrong things. While protein is important, exercise is important, all of these things, all these low socioeconomic groups don't even have all these things. They're not getting heart attacks. They're not getting heart attacks. The point is, it is purely our lifestyle. And if someone has a gene, it is our lifestyle that is upregulating that gene to manifest at an age of 40 years old. And I'll be honest with you, if it's written as well. No matter what you do, what you have, if it's your time to go, 13 years after dealing with terminally ill patients, I've also learned that our practice teaches us that no matter what you do, if it is your time to leave, it is your time to leave as well. Anyway, we don't focus on that because it's uncertain. We don't know. But we focus on what we can do. So while we have the more tech, more data, more high protein foods, let's look at it. Okay, we have high protein foods in the market. People are consuming it, but have they lowered their carbs? No. The number one fundamental breakdown in nutrition is the high carb intake today. Exercise cannot do what high carbs, cannot undo what high carbs does.
Yeah.
So the point is, I'm taking more protein, but I'm not cutting down my. People are saying, "Oh, Luke, I'm eating steak and chicken," but they're eating it with a carb. They don't understand that non-vegetarian food is complete. You don't need a carbohydrate, but if you add a carbohydrate, now the saturated fat in that steak is dangerous for your heart. But we blame the steak, but you won't blame the combination of the carb. Look at our vegetarian diet. You go to any restaurant, how do you get the right amount of protein? It's all high carb, high carb, high carb, high carb. So while we have everything around us, we're not using it the right way. We're not pairing our foods. We're not looking at our plate. We're not making better decisions. Even if we're living out of hotels, traveling, there is always a better decision we can make from a menu. Always. And if we're CEOs and we're founders, I always believe, we also have this whole money crunch thing in our head that we shouldn't spend. But health is an investment, it is not a cost. If you have the money, stay in better hotels. Stay in hotels where the chef will make the food your way. Fly airlines that allow you to sleep better, that you can revolve your time. We want to take the cheapest flight, so we'll sacrifice a night of sleep. We have to, it's a pro and con thing. If I want to become bulletproof, I am going to have to spend money and invest money in the things that are supporting my overall health. So these are the things we're missing, Vishal. And we don't understand that one trip abroad can derail the human body for 3 to 4 weeks after that.
So, just like a CEO, we all like to, put together some kind of a framework. Like, every month we meet the team, we check their business, KPIs, updates. So, do you think there can be some kind of a KPI made within the teams, between the management teams, to also check in? Are people burning out? Are they stressed? Is there a way to identify this? I'm just trying to think, because, how do you implement this at scale? That's really what founders are really good at, right? So is there any kind of thing we can do?
See, there are two ways of doing it, Vishal, from a preventive space and also from people who already have conditions. One is having a solid data point. So I'm going to share with you very soon. We've created, with help from Stanford and different universities, a lifestyle score. Takes you 6 minutes to take it. Okay, but it gives you a breakdown of every pillar I spoke about. So you have a starting point to know where I am. Then getting your medical checkups is so important because I can predict, I can literally predict from a data trend of low D3, low B12, your triglyceride ratio. I can literally predict from your HCRP and your CRP, your metabolic pathway towards cardiovascular risk, which gives you a solid data point. And
Now with
then
AI, you can do even a lot
even
more.
a lot more, even a lot more. But the sensitive points like sleep, so these things can absolutely be measured. But I'll tell you one thing. Finally, it comes down to personal responsibility. Like Vishal, we already have a ton of data. We can create more data points. But finally, it's got to be like, can I motivate anyone in this audience to stop brushing their teeth? Even if I tell you science behind it, you want. Why? Why? It's not your willpower, it's in your subconscious mind. How did it get there in your subconscious mind? Repetition, repetition, repetition from the time you were small. So when I, as a CEO or a founder, wake up today and I realize this is my day in front of me, but my non negotiables will be my sleep, My 10 minutes or 20 minutes for exercise, 2 out of my 3 meals, 10 minutes for my relaxation, whether it's music, meditation, prayer, laughing with my friends. I mean, if we practice this every day, it becomes part of us. I mean, geniuses have written books on habits, and we published a bestseller on small wins. The science is neuroscience. What we do becomes part of us. Then we don't need motivation. We're already inspired to do what we should. So we got to start making it part of, like brushing our teeth, where it's non-negotiable. And we'll never have a perfect day. If I woke up in 5 hours today, okay, I'm just going to really make sure I sleep earlier tonight. If I ate a bad meal, I'm going to make sure my next 2 meals are good enough. I'm going to make sure I take my yearly checkup every year, whether it's my stress test, my 2D echo, depending on your age and genetics, your CD angio. I'm going to take my data points and make sure I got my fundamentals in place. I'm going to make myself bulletproof because stress is not going to get less, Vishal, whether it's emotional, whether it's chemical, or whether it's physical. So the only way we can survive is actually getting stronger and stronger by doing these little things that I spoke about. Then you have a level of complexity. You want to do red light therapy, you want to do ice baths, you want to that's the next level. First, let's get the fundamentals right because that's what the body needs.
So
Then
I
all
think
these things will work better. Yeah.
we are going to open up the questions for the people in the live stream, and by the time these questions flow in, uh, let's say if we have to define five parameters outside of the general blood test, right? Are there five things which people can test, and if they find these numbers, let's say out of range, that is at least a reason for them to do further investigation? Is there like
Absolutely.
5 points?
So absolutely, absolutely. See, once a year, anyone over the age of 30 should do the stress test and 2D echo. It comes out great. For 2 years, you don't need to do it. Okay. If you have a highly genetic predisposition in your family and you're at the age of 40, you do want to get your CT angio done to measure your calcium score. Now, again, if you,
CT angio.
yeah, especially if you suffer from things like gallstones or kidney stones, or if you have frozen shoulders, you're getting injured all the time for no reason, and recovery is very slow, you can kind of tell there are calcium buildups in your body and you don't want to have that in your arteries. Okay. The third thing, if we're carrying abdominal weight and we're having sleeping issues or snoring loudly, please get your sleep study done. Sleep apnea is literally a silent killer that also leads to diabetes, CKD, a whole load of other cardiovascular events. And I can't tell you, Vishal, 1 in 4 of our patients have sleep apnea. Okay, the next thing for men over 30, check your testosterone levels. And again, it's a perception. Oh, but Luke, everyone ages, loses muscle, and loses testosterone. Untrue. Untrue. Because if I have low testosterone as a man, testosterone is not just muscle and bone. It has a cardioprotective property for the heart. Like for women, it's estrogen, which is why women in their perimenopausal stages, very few heart attacks, and men at the same age have more heart attacks, which is 40 to 47. Our testosterone levels, as they fall, we're becoming more vulnerable to aging and
So
heart and all of
CT
these things.
angio, testosterone, CT angio, and the first one was
Low testosterone, your lipid profile, your stress test, your 2D echo. In more than a lipid profile, you should get an ApoB test done. Because you can have great cholesterol levels, but your ApoB tells you the nature of your cholesterol particles, which is way more valuable data than just your LDL and your total cholesterol. So, and I would do an ApoB because all of us do our normal thing. Now, the CT angio, let me put a disclaimer. Everyone doesn't have to run through it. Speak to your cardiologist. He'll assess you, lifestyle, genetic. Everyone shouldn't do it. Like I wouldn't do it right now because I don't have risk factors. Now, if I'm a heavy smoker, a heavy drinker, yes, my risk factor increases. I would want to do a CD angio. So please make informed decisions because some of these tests may not be, at least the CT angio will not be necessary for you. If you're struggling with sleep, get a sleep study done. It is so important to detect sleep apnea early because there's a lot that can be done for it. If you're suffering from high blood pressure, please figure a way to solve that. Take your medicine, but you should be reducing your medication over time because high blood pressure is the fundamental cause of most cardiac events. And a lot of us, we get headaches. We think, oh, I'm stressed out. I didn't sleep well. But most of those headaches are silent spikes in your systolic that are creating intense damage until you finally get checked up and you get medicated. So sometimes don't ignore the throbbing in your head, these headaches. Don't just suppress it with a Crocin, a paracetamol. Be aware, I'm getting this a little too frequent. Let me check my blood pressure. Because the earlier you catch it, the safer your heart's going to be.
And hydration, right? A lot of people don't hydrate
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
That's been
Water is everything. It's the universal solvent for the human body. So yeah, that's important too.
so interesting question that screen time is inevitable for leaders in today's digital economy. Beyond the usual advice, how can they reset their nervous systems after prolonged digital exposure?
So it's very simple. Number one, if you're using a device after sunset, you use blue blockers. As simple as that. So the one thing that you can cut off is actually is the blue light, which affects your melatonin. Number two, the more time you spent on blue light, the more important your nutrition becomes. Your vitamin A's, your beta carotenes, because they're actually protective of the amount of, it can actually protect us from blue light damage. Number three, if I know I'm going to be on the screen, do not ignore your 10 to 15 minutes of staring at a sky or the early sun, getting early sun in your eyes that resets your melatonin levels. If you have 10 minutes to take a break and get a sunset, all of these things are powerful to reset your circadian rhythm. Okay, so the usual advice is sometimes always the accurate advice. But again, and the third is it's perception. Just because we think our work is on screen time doesn't mean we can't try to get better at it. It doesn't mean just because you're a techie doesn't mean that, oh, my whole life is on tech. It isn't. You can still find ways to reduce it. Take breaks between the screen. I have a very simple rule 20, 20, 20. Every 20 minutes, stand up, look at the furthest point for 20 seconds without blinking. Every 20 minutes, look at the furthest point, 20 feet away minimum. So you stare, let your eyes water if they have to, and then you sit back down. There are these little things that we can do that kind of resets, our exposure to limelight, and then of course try to, make an informed decision to do that. Never look at your screens in a dark room. Never. I don't want to disturb my wife, so I'll keep my screen on and not put the lights. You get out of the room, put on a backlight, but it's worse for you when you look at a screen in dark light. You're on long flights, tight changing time zones, use a blue blocker. No matter how odd it may look, you don't care about that because you have LED lights, you have the screen lights, all of these which are literally messing up your circadian rhythm. So that's something you can do to protect yourself from the screen.
The second question is around anxiety. Anxiety, they say, for a lot of founders, it's also a sign of untapped potential. So, how can you use anxiety as a powerful tool? I don't know. I mean, how to use anxiety as a tool, but
Yeah, so if you again you look, it's perception, Vishal. Social media has given anxiety a bad name. Anxiety is a beautiful, beautiful human emotion and signal. Without anxiety, nothing would work. Anxiety tells me that something is wrong, something is uncertain, and I need to do something. Anxiety becomes bad for us when we're stuck in the overthinking and non action. So I'm crossing the road right now. Okay, and there's a truck coming towards me. Anxiety comes up. Should I cross or should I not cross? The solution requires an action stay or run across.
so
Many
fight or
people's
flight. It's the fight
fight or
and flight.
flight
Yeah.
or freeze. Most of us are stuck in overthinking. But if I do this, what's going to happen? If I do this, we're in non action. Anxiety now grows more and more. Now it becomes fear. Now it becomes stories in your mind that may never be true. Our mind is our biggest enemy. We'd start thinking, oh, this can happen, this can happen. So that is where our mindfulness, our meditation, anxiety is beautiful. People have billion-dollar companies on anxiety because it moves them into great action. When we're anxious, our adrenaline is high. So if I'm able to channel that adrenaline into non-fear decisions and actions and risk-taking sensibly, I can create greatness,
And that's
right?
where the instant gratification comes in, right? If you're always anxious, you want quick solutions too.
Because you don't like to feel that way. So you look for the quickest thing, like, a meal in 10 minutes, sugar, more caffeine, watching whatever it is and stuff, just to reduce that anxiety. But it's only increasing dopamine. It's not taking away anxiety. Once the dopamine phase and cycle is run, you're back into the anxious state, which is why quick fixes and instant gratification actually makes us more anxious over time.
Hmm. Also, are there any keystone supplements which we should be taking? And Mikin actually has a question that there is so much adulteration, and there are all these reports around even protein powders having problems. How does one figure out if it's a good or a bad brand?
You can't because most lands are lying right now. So currently, Vishal, we are working with the government of India where we started doing third-party testings of brands, which will now have a Made in India stamp because it's third-partied by a lab that even the manufacturers don't know at the highest levels. And we're hoping that that initiative will actually, because people will start questioning, why isn't this stamp on other products? So we're trying to create the niches that people need. Some whey proteins, some plant-based proteins, magnesiums, oils, pure ghees, masalas, spices. We want the country to have availability to at least something that we use on a day-to-day basis. Because you're absolutely right. Whoever asked that question today, as an integrative specialist, I don't know if the supplements I'm giving my patients are what the founders say they are. We've learned that even in the nutraceutical space, most nutraceutical companies have two or three hero products, which are excellent. People love them, they work, but the rest of the products are substandard because people think that, oh, because this is good, all of their products are good. So we're trying to navigate this through. We're working very closely with FSSAI and the government of India to really try to bring an honest food chain because that's something which is out of our control. And that's why I urge people only if you need a supplement, take it. Just because a country is talking about it and promising longevity and promising all of that stuff, there is no pill that can increase lifespan. The only thing that can increase lifespan is how we are living every moment in our life and adding things to our diet, depleting things from our diet that are causing us to age rapidly. There is no magic pill. The fountain of youth is always going to be dependent on our internal environment and our external environment.
There's another factor of diabetes, right? A lot of people have either pre-diabetes or high. That is a very generic problem. I would say that a lot of our founders are suffering with that. So do you have any advice around how diabetes and all this is connected?
Absolutely. Diabetes is an inflammatory disease which eventually can lead to a cardiac event. So that's another point. If anyone has diabetes, okay, please understand now is the time to get into a reversal or a remission. Type 2 diabetes is a lifestyle disease, it is not a genetic disease. You can have a predisposition. Secondly, type 2 diabetes is 100% reversible. 100%. So if a patient comes to me with diabetes, I've already put them in a category of possible cardiac events, possible CKD, which is chronic kidney events, because that's how the body works. We can't separate diabetes from the heart. Everything works together. The same inflammation in our blood vessels caused by uh, irregular sugar spikes is also affecting the arteries in the heart. So, diabetes is an early indicator of metabolic health. Metabolic health includes the risk for cardiovascular disease. So again, the four things that we need to look out for is blood pressure, blood sugar levels or insulin insensitivity, abdominal visceral fat, and our lifestyle. These are the things our lipid profiles. If my triglycerides are high and my HDL is low, we need to change that ratio as quickly as possible because we are on that path of creating more inflammation.
And what about AQI, right? We know India now has among the top, whatever, top 10, 9 or whatever, 8 are from India. Delhi is known
Yeah.
for its bad air. And in fact, Mumbai is also now facing a similar problem. What does one do? Are there any exercises, anything to dodge bad AQI?
No, we can't. There are no exercises. While we can strengthen our lungs so that, we have a better respiratory system to expel toxins and PP particles, that's the small part of it. We need to put in purifiers in our homes, in our offices, in our cars. So at least the time that we spend in these places, the body gets the right clean amount of oxygen to rejuvenate and repair and all of that stuff. And hopefully there will be startups and founders that really look at this as a major problem. Because Vishal, I'll be honest with you, we can speak about sleep and food and exercise, but air, if the quality of air is bad, everything we've spoken about is almost practically, negated because we need oxygen every second of the day for every function in the human body. So that kind of moves this entire paradigm of health and flips it over. So I'm really, really hoping that, we have startups and people who are now going to use their science and experience to come up with ways where we have to improve the air because it's not going to get better, it's going to get worse. So right now in my room, I have a professional AQI monitor. I keep checking the air all the time. I would never believe in air purifiers, but I have air purifiers all over. So at least the 12 hours I spend at home, my body's getting what I need. I wear a device that IIT has now created. We're testing it out to create ionization of air around. So we have to do these things. It's not something I would like. I would like to, as a citizen of the world, live with clean air around us. But We need to become bulletproof, like I said. We need to do things in order to safeguard ourselves when the environment around us changes.
So I know there's a lot of talk of 70 and 90-hour work week. Now let's talk about breaks. There's a very good question asked around how often should one take breaks, take vacations, go out with friends and family. Is there something around that?
Absolutely. It's depending on us, right? It's depending on us. Like I like to, we can't say who's right or wrong, especially when leaders, right? See, it's so easy, Vishal, for a billionaire or someone famous to talk about how their life is. Other people's lives are very, very different. And that's where we get kind of, we want to replicate the lives of what we see because we think they're successful because they live this way. A lot of it is because they're successful, they have the ability to live this way now as well. So it comes back to the fundamentals. We have to be, this is where the spirit comes in. If my soul or my self is craving a holiday, craving family time, that is the right time. Why should we put ourselves into a box that only at this time I'm going to take it? I can make a weekend holiday. I have to be so in tune with myself to realize like there are parts of my day in Vishal where I crave nature. It's like a craving, like I just need to be in nature and I have to honor that. So the point is by meditating, by being more mindful, we're more connected to ourselves. We're not dependent on social media or Luke Coutinho to tell you have a holiday every 2 months, have a holiday every 6 months. It's so dependent on us. I mean, we're founders, we're CEOs, we have a certain level of intelligence. That intelligence has to also be reconnected inside of us, to our amazing intelligence that's telling us that you need a break. You need this, you need to cut off, you need space, you need to do a solo trip. Maybe you're going on a work trip. Can you stay back 2 days in a new country? That's what I do. When I go for my consult trips, I take 2 days in a country just to stay back, explore cultures, relax. And that's enough of a recharge for me to come back to a patient list. So we need to find things that really keep us going as makes us blissfully happy. What about breaks in between work? That's a question I get all the time. My question is, what are you doing in that break? If your break is a smoke break, I'd rather you not have a break, right? What are we doing in that break? I have a lot of Chinese CEOs. In their breaks, they put their head down, they sleep for 10 minutes. Some of them meditate, some of them do a walk, some of them have a playlist for 3 to 4 songs. Everyone finds what works for them. Everyone finds what works for them. So for that, we need a lot of mindfulness in today's world, especially Vishal, for us to understand what our souls are really trying to tell us what we need, right? That's how it is.
So there's a lot of talk around taking metformin. Peter Diamandis, David Sinclair, they're all talking take metformin. It's a great thing. So do you have any view around taking stuff like and there's rapamycin also, but now there's a lot of things are still debating about that, but a lot of these online gurus are giving all this advice and people are adopting a lot of this randomly.
Exactly. Let's talk about Brian Johnson. He spoke about a drug that he was taking for the longest time. Everyone started taking it, and he himself stopped taking it because he found that the science doesn't suit him. I mean, we have to stop aping the West, period. There's great stuff to learn from them, and there's a lot of stuff that we should unlearn. The point is, metformin is a diabetic drug. It is not a quick fix for us to eat junk food because metformin will reduce the spikes in your blood sugar levels. There is absolutely every zero connection, any connection of metformin and longevity. Vishal, if you and me make a drug tomorrow and we can prove scientifically that it can increase your lifespan, you have a business model. People will blindly buy it. That is the kind of audience that we have in the world today. It's a diabetic drug. It's like Ozempic and Manjaro. Fantastic drug for the right population of people who are heavily obese and metabolic syndrome. But for the ones who are misusing it to lose 5 kilos and 10 kilos, a lot of them are our patients with extreme gut issues, weak bones, and something called a nutrition psychiatric problem, where they become so scared to eat food. They now have a psychological problem and they're on anti relaxants and depressants. The point is, there's greatness in the West and there is greatness in Eastern tradition. How are we mindful enough to understand what works for us? And
So
it
in fact,
always comes down to the fundamentals. If I eat the right way, do I need metformin? I'm looking for metformin because I don't want to change my lifestyle. I'm not doing it because I want to live longer. Half the people on metformin will die young because they have other lifestyle conditions. So, all these people talking, there's greatness to listen and extract things that make sense. But a pill that can extend your lifetime is an absolute lie. And the best part is, who's ever going to sue them? How can you sue them? You can't. So it's a beautiful model. And I
So with one
really encourage people to stop aping these cultures, and not all cultures, these people blindly. There is no shortcut to great health. I can tell you that. There is no shortcut to great health.
Brian Johnson, when he was here, he talked about 9 months of 100% sleep score every day. But for that, he has to sleep at 8 without anybody else on the bed, has no family in the house. While that's a great score to have, but I think clearly the relationships and community and family is not really working out. So is there, how important is all of this also from a lifespan and health perspective?
So, Vishal, if you give me a couple of $1 million, I'll replicate his lifestyle.
Yeah.
And I'll lose my family, I'll lose my kid, and everything else. See, we've had so many people who are in awe of him. I respect him for whatever he's doing. They don't want to have children because they feel they will not be able to live the lifestyle that Brian Johnson lives. But now let me talk to you about data on my podcast with Dan Butner, who did the Blue Zone study. Beautiful, solid data points. You know what came out of all the data points? Connection, human connection, socializing, community, love, appreciation that kept the human heart living longer. And my point is, people go to extremes only when there are voids in their life because an extreme gives you an identity. Everyone wants an identity. A workaholic has the identity of, oh, that person works so much. So we have to really reconnect with ourselves and understand that there are so many people living to over 100 and doing it in balance. Which way do we want to go? When the soul is empty, we have so many voids, we always latch onto extremes and complication because it gives us a sense of importance and validation and all of these things. So it's so important for us to understand that, okay, there are many things I would love to take from Brian Johnson. Like he stresses on the importance of sleep. And he's right, it's a fundamental. Now, there are 100 ways to do it, right? Not the extreme way alone. If you didn't have a kid, Vishal, if I didn't have a kid, we don't have families and stuff, we would be preaching very differently on health because we're able to, but that isn't the truth. So, all we can do in our spaces of leadership is inspire people to revisit the basics and first get your basics right. See how it changes for you mentally, emotionally, nurture your relationships. All of these things are important because, Vishal, I deal with terminally ill patients. I've had the privilege of talking to people who are on their deathbeds. Not one of them, whether they're CEOs, billionaires, owners of companies, not one of them speak about their designation. Not one of them speak about the companies they built, how much money they have, which car they drove. They speak about love, lost love, children, memories, childhoods, experiences. Not one of them talk about all of these things. Death teaches us many lessons of while we want to build great companies and do it all, like I said. But don't forget these little things because that is what the essence of life is made up of eventually.
I think, Luke, we're already over our time, and there are a few more questions, but I think people can always tweet that to you. But once again, thanks a lot for talking about this important topic. I think we are all here, dealing with our own version of stress. Everybody has stress. There is good stress and bad stress. I think finding the balance is what is really important. You also mentioned about not being in denial. A lot of people think that I'm working out and I'm exercising and I'm doing all of that, so it can't happen to me. So it's important to look at the data, and you've made some excellent suggestions on the tests one can do. You also spoke a lot about uh, balancing sleep and balancing nutrition, which is a very important thing, and not going after things which are fad, instant gratification, and all these so called biohacks, which are not helping all of us. I just want to conclude this session by once again thanking you, and hoping that everybody listening, as well as your friends, families, and other people, if you are, even if you have a 1% feeling that, hey, something is not right with me, please go talk to your doctor, get yourself tested. You all have building amazing companies, you all are doing the right work, all your business metrics are looking good. It is time to look at your own metrics inside you, which also have a story to say. And you may be a unicorn company founder, but you have to understand that, are you in the unicorn of your health? How? Because that is the finally your biggest wealth. So once again, thanks a lot, Luke, and thanks everybody for
Vishal,
joining
I
us.
would like to leave everyone with one more, just
Yeah,
one more
please
thought,
go ahead.
because at the end of the day, we all have to face our perfect truths and our perfect lies that we tell ourselves. Like you said, everyone's successful on this call. Okay. Ask yourselves, what made your startup or your business successful? Did you use biohacks? Did you use quick fixes to build a solid business? Everything that you put into building your business to where you are today, financially or socially, okay, those are the same things you need to build your health, which is discipline in your business, consistency in your business. You failed, you got up again, you fail one day with your health, you start again the next day. That is the absolute truth. It's perception. What you've done in your business, we now need to start doing. You took personal responsibility for your business. Why aren't we taking personal responsibility for our health? So these are some deep questions I want to leave everyone. Thank you, Vishal, and thank you everyone for being here today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think it's uploading. It says 78%, so I think it'll get uploaded. Perfect. Perfect. I'll do that. Thanks.